So look, let's start it off. So Layne Storrier,
Yep.
ultra athlete,
Yeah.
world record holder for 36
Half
consecutive half Ironmans. Take me back. What I guess, like when someone does something like this, as I spoke to Nick about when he was on,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like there's something deeper going on, you know?
Yeah.
Nick didn't have a good answer for me, and he didn't give me anything that I didn't know, like in a sense that he didn't shake my world or tell me that he had, you know. But what he sort of looked at it was that he's on some kind of search, and I think what I'm realizing is that everyone has their own different process here. Tell me about life growing up. You're a young man. How old are you now?
25.
25, right? So you're still a young bloke. What at such a young age makes someone this motivated and this interested in trying to do something that's quite ridiculous, running 7 hours a day for 36 days straight?
Yeah.
How did you get there?
I don't know. It's a real funny turn of events because nothing looking at me growing up would say that I was ever going to go and do this. My parents are builders, so I grew up on the job site growing up, played rugby league all my life, partied, whatever it was. So there was nothing that ever really attracted me to triathlon or any long distance running or anything like that. Like I was happy playing footy, playing Oztag, and that was about it. But I think the one thing for me that really, I guess, does drive me is whenever I do want to do something, I want to be all in on it. And I've got a very addictive personality. So when I was growing up, it was my all-in thing was footy. So I was always I wasn't very good at footy, but I was always helping out. I was always coaching footy, playing footy, helping around the footy club. So that was my all-in thing. And then coming out of school, it was probably to get my builder's license and go down that path. And then along that path, there was obviously the partying and that. And when you want to party, I'd always want to be the best partier. I don't know. I just always had this, I wanted to be the best at whatever I was doing and sort of stand out around people. Then that became me. I went into the buyer's agent scene and I got into that real young and brought investment properties and probably made a lot more growth than most people do in their life. Made a lot of good investment choices and I don't know, through that, it sort of helped me to become where I am now. And that sort of, I don't know, it just once I sort of started hitting this newfound thing of endurance sports and running and triathlon, I just completely got addicted by it. Where it was even now, if I don't do training for one day, I feel bad. And it's good in a good, in some way, but then other ways it's it's my whole personality now. So yeah, and I'm very aware of that, but it's also you look at it, it's to go and run every day, it's healthy. But then it's if you don't run and then you get to the end of the day and you're if I don't run or if I don't feel very I've done a productive workout for that day, I'll get to the end of the day and I feel like shit because I'm oh, you've wasted the day. It's a waste of a day, whatever it is. And I think that's a bit where I'm stuck at the moment because I've done the challenge last year. This year, even at the moment, I'm training for an Ironman, which is for most people, it's probably a real big milestone. And it's to take nothing away from it, it's a huge event. And it would be a very, I want to try and race it and go maybe around that 10-hour mark, which is equivalent to a sub 3-hour marathon for most people, I guess, when you put it in that way. But for me, I look at that and I'm I know I can do an Ironman. It's not I'd love to go under 10 hours, but it's I don't think I will. But it's I do all the training to try and get close to that. But I'm not scared of the Ironman. Whereas last year before my event, I was actually scared for that to try and do the 36 halves in a row. I was I don't know how my body will pull up. Will I get injured? How's the whole sort of thing going to go after day 5 to day 10 and thereon? So now it's all about, for me, it's I guess I've got big goals in the future and it's how do I sort of start pushing everything towards that? And I think it does come down to my addictive personality of, because I probably have been not lucky, but very driven, and I've been able to sort of focus on whatever task I've had in front of me, and I've been able to see great progress in all that my whole life. And I probably have like hop, skipped and jumped from a fair few things and once I get good at one thing, I sort of get over it and go to the next thing. And this is probably something now where I'm like, all right, I'm starting to get good at it. And I'm probably at that stage of like, oh, what do I want to do to go to that bigger stage? But yeah, it's very difficult for my personality to find out what that next thing is or how far do I take it now. Because like it is such a time consuming thing and it's not just, I guess, me who's got to be all in when I do like another big challenge. It's like everyone around me has got to be all in because I can't do what I'd done by myself. There's just no way you can go and do 36 half Ironmans just by yourself. Like you need to have a crew of people around you, which like I'm super grateful to have those people around me that do help me out like that. But yeah, you also feel like a bit of a dick sometimes.
Sure.
Trying to make the world revolve around yourself.
Yeah. When you take it back to this addictive personality that you said,
yeah.
When you take it back to sort of growing up and going through school and I guess, you know, going through adolescence and growing up, were you out in the country through that?
Yeah, so not like complete country. So like we're about an hour and a half southwest of Sydney.
Right.
So it's a place called Campbelltown. Like it's called Camden, but I guess the most common place that people know is Campbelltown down there.
What was the culture like down there?
It's very much like country town vibes. Like, so that's why I sort of say like a lot of my family is from further west, like 6 hours west, like out in Griffith and that. So it's a very much a country town and the culture it's like you play footy and you drink piss and like that's about it. I'll go back there now and I still look at it and I'm like, I get to like 4 or 5 days down there. I'm like, oh, there's not a hell of a lot to do down here. And because that was my whole life growing up, like we'd all go and play footy. We'd go away on footy trips together, everything like I didn't know anything different. And then it was a stage where I sort of stopped drinking and stopped playing footy that I was sort of felt like I didn't fit in there anymore. But yeah, like the town itself is an awesome town and there's like lots of great people there. But it's just like when you sort of don't fit into that sort of scene anymore. Like when I was in that scene, that was like the best thing ever. I loved it. Like everyone knows everyone. You walk down the street, you can talk to whoever you want. Really good place. But then once I sort of went away from that and I stopped drinking and so I wasn't going to the pub and talking with all my like mates that were drinking all that anymore, it sort of felt a lot different and I was always doing a lot more stuff by myself then. And then, like I sort of ended up deciding to make the move up here about a year ago. And the biggest difference from here to a place like Camden is just the community. Like you look at it here and there's run clubs everywhere. You can literally go and if you can do any sport that you want to do 5, 6, 7 days a week.
Sure.
Like literally there's more than enough opportunities to go. There's run clubs that fit people that just want to go and do 2 or 3K. There's run clubs that fit people that want to go and do 20, 30K, whatever it is. Then there's triathlon clubs, there's bike clubs, there's everything up here. So yeah, that small town down at home, like just sort of, I guess I just wanted more.
Did you scare yourself with the drinking? Like, did you get yourself into any bad spots?
Oh, I never would say I scared myself, but I look back at it now and I've passed out over 6, 7 times. Like, but like passed out as in not make it home, passed out behind the pub, passed out in the bush.
Yeah.
Luckily that I got good parents that have come and found me at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
There's been, plenty of times where that's happened. And then there's times where I've woken up, like this front tooth's a fake tooth, like woken up, had a missing front tooth, didn't know how it happened.
Yeah.
Had to ask my mates what happened. Like just a lot of different stuff. And you look back at it now and it's like, I could probably see like, because my parents used to think, like my dad, he would sit down and have 6 to 8 beers every night. And that's normal for our culture. Like that was just nothing different. But for me to always go out and every day, like say on a Sunday morning, it's like, oh, what did you get up to last night? I was like, don't remember. He's like, what do you mean you don't remember? I was like, can't tell you. Like, I just used to get to a stage where I'd drink so much I just black out and that was about it. And I look back at it and it's pretty funny that I don't find it scary now, but that was just.
But do you think maybe you actually just instinctively think see what I'm sort of getting at is, right, you've said you've got an addictive personality.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you, but I'm just thinking like, is the running thing as though like you're the kind of person that if you sit still for too long, you might find something else to fill that void, and being that like you need to keep yourself sort of active, you know what I mean? Like the way you said that you almost it's almost a responsibility to run.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're there's a responsibility to yourself to stay in this shape and not slip back to these evils that have been,
To be honest, like I haven't drank now for 2 years. And probably a part of that is because I know what I'm like. And at the end of my challenge, everyone's like, oh, surely you're going to have a beer, like celebrate you've just done 36 half Ironmans. And I was like, a part of me really wanted to just sit back and have like, had all my family there, just have a couple of beers at the pub. But then you are right. A part of me is scared that I'll go back and it'll be back to what it was before. So yeah, you are right in that sort of sense of.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, I mean, it's such a cultural. It's such a part of our culture. And especially footy club culture. There's other cultures in different sports, but I find it predominantly in footy clubs. Is that AFL or league? Yeah, so
league.
We've got a similar sort of, I guess AFL is very similar. I'm from Melbourne, so, and part of the reason why my family, when I was growing up, my dad didn't, we're Italians. My parents weren't worried about me getting hurt. They just worried about me drinking. So I wanting to be an Aussie growing up, I was a WOG and I wanted to be an Aussie. And so the thing that I actually remembered seriously doing was just becoming a great drinker. Wanting to just be the best at this drinking thing.
It's a badge of honor, isn't it? Like if you're the best drinker in your crew, it's like say whenever you go somewhere and it's like you got to do a scull somewhere, and if you're the person who can scull the quickest, it's like it's a massive badge of honor. And I don't know why. Like it's funny to think, but I just grew up with that, and it was just like that's the norm. And it's like if you can be the person who drinks the most and whatever, and the drunkest. I used to wear that as a badge of honor. Like in all honesty, I used to think that was like really cool. Which I now look back at that and it's pretty different.
Is it hard? Like for me, I didn't have my family on board, so for me, it kind of stopped, and I didn't really think it was. I don't know. It did hang around for a while, but I don't know. I think one thing I'll say about drinking is it's really hard to say like if you can't really blame anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
Because I know that for me, my parents weren't drinkers.
Yeah.
I really was.
Yeah.
My brother's not.
Yeah.
I've managed to sort of, I guess I still drink, but I don't remember the last time I was drunk.
Yeah.
But then there's other people whose parents are big drinkers, and then they decide they're not going to be.
Yeah.
In your sort of, I guess, assessment, was leaving that sort of, was the running something that was there a point where you went, hey, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, and I want to try and find the other guy, the guy I can be?
Yeah. The biggest turning point for me was a challenge called 75 Hard. And it's like 75 days, you do 2 45-minute workouts every day. One's got to be outdoors. You've got to drink 3.8 litres of water every day. You've got to read 10 pages of a book every day. You've got to drink no alcohol, stay on a diet the whole time, and then take a progress photo every day. If you fail any single one of those things throughout the whole 75 days, you've got to start again.
Wow. And so who's sorry, just give us a bit of a brief on 75 Hard.
If you do 75 Hard for 1 full year of your life, it will change you to the point where you can flip that switch back on and off at will.
The 75 Hard's from Andy Frisella.
Yeah.
He's over in America. And it's a mental toughness challenge.
That guy's he's got a podcast.
Yeah, so MFCEO. One of my biggest turning points is finding his podcast. So my middle sister brought it home one day, and she'd heard about 75 Hard through someone on Instagram. And when she first told me about it, I was like, I listened to the podcast about 75 Hard, and my first response was like, that's so stupid. I was like, why the hell would anyone want to try and do that? I was a chippy at that stage, and I'm working in the 40-degree heat, and I'm probably drinking 1 litre to 1.5 litres of water a day. And I'm like, how can someone drink 3.8 litres of water a day?
Yeah.
And like just all these little things, I just was like, that's so stupid. Who wants to do 2 workouts a day? I gave myself like a million reasons not to do it. But with Andy's podcast, there's so many different places where he goes with that podcast. I started listening to like other episodes, and then like it'd just be in a random another episode, he'd like touch on 75 hard, and it always like kept on like, I'll probably listen to about another 50 podcasts before I decided to do it. And I was like, oh, maybe I could do it. I was like, oh, but I'll wait till after my birthday.
Yeah, after I've had a big piss.
Or after Christmas or whatever it was. So like at that stage, it was, I had my birthday coming up, then I had like Christmas, New Year's, and I was like, I'm not going to do it over New Year's and that. I was like, I'll wait till after. But then actually on my 23rd birthday, I carried on like an absolute, like normally I could go out and drink, and I've never been in a fight. Never.
What day's your birthday?
30th of October.
So just before Christmas.
So just before Christmas, and went out and I carried on like an absolute pork chop, like had a fight with one of my mates, like just like two blokes pissed as, didn't remember like half the day. And like that was like a real, and because I'd also been thinking about this 75 hard challenge, that was like the moment where I was like, fuck it, I'm starting now. So I started then and went over New Year's Eve, Christmas, and it was a real shock to like my family, not so much my family, probably was at the start.
So hang on. So you've gone out on your birthday and what, you got into a fight?
Well, me and my mate just had like a blue, like nothing too serious. Like he tripped me over. I smashed myself with like a bottle and split my eye open. And,
oh, it sounds like a wake up call.
well, like just like I done that, and then I went back at him, and like it was just two mates. He was just ankle tapping me, trying to be funny, and we just had a go at each other. Like it was nothing, like we brushed it over within 10 minutes, but it was just like that was so out of character for me. And then like the next day waking up, I was like, fuck, like that's, and I think it was just because I was playing in my mind so much that I was like, maybe I do want to have a break from drinking. And so yeah, like started that. And like I said, like our household was like very much drinking orientated. Like over COVID on that, we used to have like a Friday night dress up, and you'd have to like do a dress up and make a cocktail and stuff like that. That was stuff that we do as a family to keep ourselves entertained. So that sort of shows you like the culture of our household right there and then. And it was funny, like at the start, like there's probably a little bit of resistance from my family. Then they sort of jumped on board, but then my external family were also like, oh, that's very weird. Why would you want to do that? But my mum then ended up doing 75 hard when I was up to like day 50. She jumped on it.
Wow.
And then my sister my middle sister, she ended up doing 75 hard after I'd finished. So it went from we're a family of 5. So it's me, like my mum and dad, me, then 2 younger sisters. And then my younger sister, she's not a big drinker anyway. So it went from a family of like drinking every weekend to then leaving dad as the only one drinking. And it was actually a really difficult time for especially myself, I think, because me and dad worked together. So it was like we'd get in the truck every day. We'd drive to work. He'd drive there in the mornings. I'd drive home, and he'd grab like a 3-pack of long necks on the way home and drink them on the way home. And that was all well and good when I was drinking, like never thought another thing of it. But then once I stopped drinking, I was like, oh, what are you doing? Like we'd have to drive away from home to go to the bottle shop and then drive another like hour and 15 minutes home anyway. I was like, you're just making this trip 20 minutes longer to go and get 3 long necks. And then it was like all of us were teamed up against dad, and it like started like really creating like just like a lot of friction in the household. And like dad's never been like, you wouldn't be able to tell if he's had 30 beers or if he's had one. Like he's still like, it's not like he ever gets drunk. He just enjoys to have a beer. And it's not like he's an alcoholic or anything. He just enjoys to have a beer. So it was like, but I was like, oh no, because of mine was like, when I drink, I'm drinking to get drunk. And that's obviously what you're doing. So it was a real tough time for like our family household and how we had to get over that. And just like, now I look at it, I'm like, I can go with my dad, we can go to the pub and he can have a couple of beers and I'll have a couple of Cokes, and it's all well and good. But it was that real
at that time. So when was that time?
That would have been about just over 2 years ago.
So was it sort of whilst we were in lockdowns and stuff,
No,
or just
it was
after?
after.
Just after lockdowns.
Yeah.
Did it create a wedge? Like, did you ever have arguments and drama about it, or do you guys not?
It was not so much arguments, but it was more like everyone would start like counting how many beers dad was having of a night. And like before that, no one would have known how many beers dad was having of a night. It was just like, it is what it is. He's having a couple of beers. he's not carrying on or anything like that. But then it was like once everyone
Bit of
else,
judgment.
yeah, once it was so much judgment, and like I can see now looking back at it, I'm like that must have been so hard for him because he's just went like I'm 23 at this stage, so he's done nothing different from since I was born at least. So probably since he was 18, he's done nothing different from when he was 18 till 45 or 46 at that stage. And now all of a sudden he's getting told to live differently and you shouldn't be doing that and, you're drinking too much.
Does he feel like, because you probably would have been like his closest mate.
Me and my dad are best mates, yeah.
And so to have your mate suddenly break like you're, like not on the same team. It's like suddenly I start barracking for a different football team.
And like I look back at it now and it was a really tough stage.
Yeah. Does he communicate well, your old man? Or is he an old-fashioned sort of Aussie that kind of doesn't?
No, he's pretty good. Like, it's more just like he didn't understand. He's an old school Aussie. Like, he just didn't understand. He's like, I've done this my whole life. Like, why all of a sudden are you just fucking picking on me?
Yeah.
And that was his.
Would have been hard for him.
100%. I look back at it now and I'm like, and look, like a lot of my best mates still drink, and I went to the footy yesterday and all of them had a beer and I just sat there and drank me water. Like, it doesn't bother me to be around people drinking, but because I was in such a headspace and of like, you can't be your best self if you're drinking and whatever. And now I look back and I'm like, fuck, it was such a change for me. And I think I was very arrogant in that way of like, I've changed, and I brushed a lot of mates and whatever along that stage as well. But I was just like a very arrogant person, and it's come down to that addictive personality, I think, of like,
I think sometimes though when you're breaking a pattern, you need to really slam it into the new pattern. I don't think you can have any room for reasonableness or grey areas. You need to be hard, and I think that's where when people want to get their life on a different track, it can really upset other people. But sometimes they don't really know any. There probably is other ways, but there's no known way to just groove in that new pattern without upsetting the other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it is tough. Like I've seen like lots of my previous best mates. Like I don't talk to them anymore, and it's all on me really. Like I just don't even bother with that communication anymore, and that's all on my part. But like you said, you got to draw a line in the sand and.
Well, it's because when you grow up, I think you get to a point where you can choose your tribe, as they say, the cliche word of the sort of time, is find your tribe. Well, it's true. When you're born into a community, when I was a kid, we didn't have social media and all this shit. So if you were born into that community and that group, there's a good chance you're just going to end up part of that community and that group. Whereas now we can find
different people everywhere,
and connect with different people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the other part of it is people feel that they get like, I could imagine some of your friends would think that, like, even when you tell me about 75 hard, right?
Yeah.
I look at it and I think, that's exactly how I feel about it. I feel like, fuck, that's just something I couldn't do right now.
Yeah.
You start thinking about it. But you've managed to do it.
Yeah.
And then you've gone beyond that.
Yeah.
And broken a world record and it must be hard for people who have known you well to think, well, we were both just doing the same thing.
Yeah.
He found something in himself
Yeah.
to get him out of here and to do that.
Yeah.
And rather than ask why or how, it's easier to just say, what a dickhead.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, know what I mean?
I would have been the same person back then as well. Like, it's so easy to look at people doing better than and just go, oh, what a fuckwit.
The first time you heard Andy's podcast, that's what you thought of him. Like, what a dickhead. I can't drink that sort of amount of water.
How fucking stupid. I was like, the first thing that I thought was like 3.8 litres of water will make you sick.
Yeah.
But like now look at it, there's not a day that I probably don't drink under like 4.5 litres, 5 litres of water.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what was I even thinking back then sort of thing. So it is just funny like how your perception changes when you actually, and one of my biggest things is like, I probably am scared of change a lot as well. So like growing up, I just loved that mateship that we had. And for me to step away from it, that was like a big change for me.
Of course.
And like my parents and my mum hounds me about it all the time. She's like, you're scared of change. And so is my girlfriend. They're like, you're scared of change. And I probably am.
How so? Because the way I see it is that you've made a big change.
I've made a big change, but I just love routine. I'm like, even going on holidays, I'm like, oh, I'd rather just be at home where I know like
Just routine,
everything's lined up. I can go and do this. I can go and do that. And whatever it is, like say even I love to have dinner at like 6 o'clock every night or whatever it is, like 6:30, 6 o'clock. And if there's one night where I'm like, we get home and it's late and whatever, I'm like, oh, fuck. I get flustered because I'm not having dinner early or I don't like, I'm very much like routine, like to be in a routine. And that's just something that I've got to work on as well. Like I have had big change in my life, but yeah, sometimes I just get stuck in that routine of living and I sort of don't look back at the changes either, and I sort of don't look so much back at like the days. I think it's so easy to just get stuck in that routine and all the days just combined into one. Yeah.
Do you think that it's almost like it's almost like living with someone with OCD because like you've got like this compulsion. It's almost a compulsion.
Well, yeah, like when I grew up, I had a bad OCD.
Yeah.
Like there was a stage where I would have been maybe like 14 and we used to live in like a 5-bedroom house, like big house growing up. And I used to go and lock and check every single door or window from like the lounge room all the way up to my bedroom. But like not just check everything was locked. Like I used to like scan the house that if there was someone in the house, they wouldn't have been able to get past me. Like it used to take me like 45 minutes to an hour to get to bed.
Wow.
But I don't know why this happened. Like it just transformed. I think it was like one day mum and dad left the garage door open downstairs.
Sure.
And then I was like, oh, I'll go and check that. Then I was like, oh, what if they left the office door open? And then I was like, for some reason in my head, I was like, oh, what if someone's in the office? Then they've snuck through the door. And it like, that used to be like, I used to have OCD so bad.
Yeah.
And I probably don't have it. Well, I definitely don't have it as bad now. I don't even have it anymore. But like it used to shit that up the walls because he's like,
just
everything's locked, mate. Like, just go to bed. Like, you're in a safe house. Like, what are you so worried about? And there was even like stages like, what else did I used to do that was real bad OCD? Like, I used to have it terribly bad.
Yeah.
Just like not.
What age are we talking about?
Probably 13, 14.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And like, never diagnosed, but it was like pretty clear. Like, I was probably like heaps of shit with like your socks. I had like everything had to be like every morning I'd get up and it was like you're having your honey on toast with a glass of milk. You go and you're brushing your teeth. You're going to do a shit like whatever it was.
All in the exact
everything
order.
was the exact order. Like one of the things was like actually I remember this the other day and I hadn't even thought about this for ages, but it was like when I'd say goodbye to someone, I was like, oh, I'll see you later. But I'd want them to say see you later back as well. And like I could say like goodbye to dad 5 or 6 times until he said see you later back to me. But he didn't know that either. I was just like, I was like, oh, see ya. And he was like, yeah, goodbye. And then I'd like walk near him like, all right, see you later. And I'd wait for him to say see you later back to me. I don't know why. But like that was just like weird OCD shit that only I knew that was going off on the side of my head. But yeah, it's like.
Well, I think, look, I mean, obviously, I don't know where that comes from and how. I don't know anything about
it's
that.
Weird, man.
But it's good to identify that, like, you know, part of what you're doing now. I mean, when you lose control, it's probably some point of control in a sense that, you know, getting thrown into situations where you do have to survive and you do have to think on your feet and nothing's actually in your control can be quite confronting, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, I definitely know that to do well at something like this, you need to have that ability. So in that regard, it's kind of serving your goals, right? Because the biggest problem for me is I find I've got too much randomness in my life. So for me to actually know where I'm going to be tomorrow, what I'm going to be doing, that's very difficult. You know, I try to set up this office and this studio in a way that there's all the good things around, like my water and my this and my that, because I don't want, if I have to make a decision, I want it to be the right one. But it is difficult. And I think what I was wondering about when you were talking about the drinking sort of stuff, was, do you feel that once you sort of got over that period of your life and you did that 75 hard, do you feel that once you completed that, you were then equipped with the knowledge that you can achieve in this space and now you want to see what you can do? Or
100%.
how did you like transfer those skills, or what did you learn from that?
Yeah, so I guess I done that 75 hard, came out of that, and the next thing I sort of signed up for was I ended up doing like a half Ironman.
Well, before you get into it, what were the results of the 75 hard?
The biggest thing for me was like the stop drinking. Like the stop drinking. I'd never read a book before that as well. Like 23 years old, never read a book in my life, not even at school. I just like hated anything to do with English with a passion. Like public speaking, all that sort of stuff, hated it with a passion. And so that was like the biggest takeout that I started actually reading, and I enjoy reading now, which is bizarre. Like if I'd have told myself at 22, you'll read every day, it's like bullshit, like not a chance. So the biggest takeout for me was like obviously to stop the drinking, and it gave me so much more confidence. I think because I used to use drinking as my armor. So like I'd go to the pub and I wouldn't feel confident until I had like 3 beers, but then I could go and talk to anyone. Whereas I then had to, one of my biggest things was during 75 hard was I wasn't going to say no to not going out. So I would still go out with my mates, but maybe instead of staying out till 1 o'clock, I'd end up back home at 9:30 or whatever. But I soon realized that like going out, I was like, oh, this isn't my scene. But I still wanted to be confident enough to go and talk with everyone and still have a good time. And that was one thing for me that like realized I've used to like want to be the life of the party. And I was like, oh, I can't do that sober. But then I realized like after being sober for a couple of maybe like 3 or 4 weeks and going out, I was like, oh, I can actually have just as good as a time as anyone. Like I can go out and still be fun and do funny shit, but you don't have to be a dickhead about it. Like you don't have to be drunk to do that. So that was like the biggest takeouts for me, like was I got in a real good routine of like the working out, obviously. Like you do 2 45-minute workouts a day, you feel amazing. Like that was the fittest I'd ever been in my life. I'd like such like...
Were you overweight or were you chubby or were you fit? Like what were you like before you started?
I was skinnier than this. Like because like being a chippy on the job site, like I actually gained weight over 75, which was obviously muscle. But like I used to be a chippy, work on the job site for 12 hours a day and probably eat a ham and cheese sandwich at lunch.
And a Monster Energy drink.
And like honestly, like shit like that, it's like I look back at it now and like, how did you live off that? Like, how did your body even run off that? So yeah, I was like skinnier than than I am now. So yeah, I gained a little bit of muscle, but it was just more about like the healthy eating, like setting up that little part of it as well, and then like just the water intake. So it completely changed like my confidence as well.
What did you eat on it? Like, what's the diet?
Well, you can pick whatever diet you want. So like some people go vegetarian or whatever it is. Like I just counted my calories because I'd never done that in my life. So like I was like, I just want to try and stick to, I think at that stage it was like try and stay around 3,000 calories or something like that for the day, and then try and get a good amount of protein as well. So like you can pick your diet. Like some people might want to be doing, I don't know, carnivore diet or whatever it is. It's not like you've got to be eating 2,000 calories. Like it can be whatever diet you want to be to either gain muscle or lose weight or whatever it is, just as long as you're like on a healthy diet, not eating sugary foods or anything like that. Like you can't have any cheat meals.
Right.
So yeah, coming out of that, like it was the biggest thing for me was the confidence, like that I had in myself, like to not go out and drink, and yeah, like the knowledge that I've started like learning as well, like through the reading and all that. Yeah.
And so from that, when you finished that, how long before you started on this journey?
Oh, so that I finished that at the start of 2023. No, 2022. Sorry. And then like got into doing more like triathlon. Like that's when I started triathlon once I finished it. So I started doing a bit of triathlon here and there, not really knowing too much. Like never swam in my life, never ridden a road bike, and the only time I'd ran was playing footy. So just got into that, done one normal try. Then I signed up for a half Ironman. And then one of the guys I was training with at a gym, he was like, oh, I've signed up for 100K at Mount Kosciuszko. And that was like 7 weeks away. And the first I'd ran at that stage was like, the half marathon and the half Ironman was the first I'd ran. And he's like, you're fitter than me. He's like, you should be able to do it. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, the longest I've ran is 21K. And he's like, no, you'll be right. Like, just sign up for it. So I signed up
to run 100K at Mount Kosciuszko trail run.
Yeah. So
this is the one Nick Carbone did?
Yeah, the one that Nick just done last year. Yep.
Right.
So I done
this was the year before?
The year before, right. Yep. So signed up for that and Yeah, like even over the train, the longest I'd ran was 23K. So I went and done the 100K at Mount Kosciuszko, and like leading up into that, like the feeling of like not knowing, it's such an awesome feeling. Like I was the day before, I can remember like we got our hotel at Mount Kosciuszko, and I'm there like shitting my pants. Like I had my parents, my sister, and then my best mate come, and I was like to them, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to fucking do this tomorrow. Like I've ran 23K before, but I don't even know what 45K is going to, like, I don't even know, I haven't even run a marathon yet, let alone
100.
running 100. And that day just was such a great experience.
Yeah,
like,
I love it. It sounds amazing.
Just so eye-opening. People that I met along there as well, like, because my small country, like, it's not even a small country town, but from my town, no one had ever done anything. No one had even run a marathon. Like, I was the first person that I knew to do a half Ironman where I was from. Like, once I finally got the 100K done, like, crossing the finish line just, like, gave me so much power of, like, oh, my God, like, look what I can actually do in a sense. And then after that, I watched the Iron Cowboy. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Iron Cowboy, but he's like my biggest inspiration, and he's done 101. Well, at that stage, he'd done 50 full Ironmans in 50 states of America in 50 days. So there's a documentary called Redefining Impossible. And I just watched Redefining Impossible before I done the Mount Kosciuszko, the 100K.
My name is James Lawrence. I'm a husband, a father, and a triathlete. In 2012, I broke the world record for the most iron distance triathlons done in 1 year.
The whole concept of it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe someone could go and do that, because he's pretty much doing an Ironman that was taking him like 16 to 17 hours a day. Then they'd have to pack it up, get him in the motor home to travel 3 or 4 hours. And he was like maybe sleeping, getting treatment whilst he was driving. Then they just chuck him out the door and he'd have to get in the pool or do whatever like it was at that next thing. And there was like cyclones following him along the travel. Like, wow. It is a crazy documentary of like just showing what the human body can do. And for some reason, I just always like, that's always been the pinnacle of like human performance for me. Like performance and grit. Like there's your Gogginses and all that. And look, they're tough, but it's like, when I see this guy, like that's the pinnacle for me. I don't think anyone is tougher than this guy.
Wow.
So that for me, I was like, all right, what's something that I could get to like sort of start moving me along towards that goal? And yeah, just one day I sort of was like, oh, I wonder what like the record for the most consecutive half Ironmans is. And I looked it up, and a guy had done 35 consecutive half Ironmans. And yeah, so I decided to go for that record. Like Iron Cowboy's previous record for half Ironmans was like 23. He'd done in a year. He'd done 23 half Ironmans in a year, which like back in 2012, that was like the Guinness World Records, 23 Ironmans half Ironmans in a year. And then obviously his went on to just go and do heaps bigger and badder shit than that. But I was like, oh, see where I can start. And for me, that was still like a massive goal at that
Absolutely,
stage.
yeah.
Like I said, I'd done one half Ironman before then, and I just ran 100K. So
then starts the planning, right?
Yeah.
And what was the sort of the process there, and who helped you, and who's the key players in that story?
Originally, I wanted to do it around my birthday and like do it all before I turned 25.
Yeah.
And then when I moved up here, I was like, oh, it's going to be too hot in October to try and do it. I was like, let's do it in September. So we moved it forward a year. But yeah, he's like, oh, if we can do a 6 month.
A year or a month, sorry.
Sorry, move it forward a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so move it forward to the 1st of September when I started. But yeah, he was like, all right, we can give you like 6 months of training, and it's just going to be like full out 28 hours a week of training pretty much for those whole 6 months. And then, yeah, it was all about
who's this guy? Is this your coach?
Dave Hine, yeah. He was my coach, yeah. And yeah, so he started like lining it out, and yeah, it was just like all about trying to build me up to try and be able to do this. And then obviously you always want to do something that have a purpose behind it. And yeah, one of my mates from down in Wollongong, Brad Dryborough, he's got cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is like one disease that I think there's over like 1,000 different mutations of it. So it's just like for him to get a cure for it, it's like we might have a cure for the most common mutation of it, but then there's another 1,000 of them that we don't have a what's the word I'm looking for there?
Like a cure.
Cure for, sorry. Yeah, cure.
So I was looking it up, and like you said, that the first thing that comes up is a change in your life expectancy.
Yeah.
So does it affect, like if you're running with this guy who's got cystic fibrosis, does it affect him running, or is it one of those things that just like it will affect him one day?
So it definitely affects like their lung capacity. So some of them can have lung capacity at like 70%. Like there's a guy down in Sydney that I've been talking to recently, Sam Gare, and his lung capacity was at 18%. He's waiting for a double lung transplant. So when you look at it like in terms of like that, yeah, it definitely affects their running. But when I first met Brad, I had no idea that he had cystic fibrosis. Like we went for a 10K run. I went to a run club there, met him, start talking, just like two genuine dudes, like any other person I go and talk to on a 10K run. And then we go for breakfast, and with cystic fibrosis, with their new, like they've just got new tablets out that they have, and he's got to have like 50 tablets a day.
50, wow.
Yeah, yep. So, and he pulls out it's like an old person when they pull out their container of tablets, and I was like, oh, that's a bit random sort of thing. Like it was just a Sunday morning, and he had like 3 tablets with his breakfast, and I didn't want to be nosy or anything, but I just sort of looked over and didn't ask any questions. And then we just kept talking. And he's like, oh, yeah, with my cystic fibrosis. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, but he just sort of brushed over it as if it was nothing. So, like, for me, I was like, oh, yeah, it couldn't be too major of a thing. Like, we've just went and ran 10K. He's just brushed over it. Like, it might just be something like a light diabetes or something. I didn't know what it was. Like, and then I went home and I started looking it up and started like finding more out about his story. And yeah, like 2 years before that, he was in the hospital with like bleeding lungs. His parents pretty much got told that when he was born that he'd be better off being born with like a terminal illness like cancer rather than living his life with cystic fibrosis and just like all these things that he had to overcome with through his life.
Wow.
Which was a huge eye-opener for me. So
I guess there's also like you've just sort of pointed it out in real time for me, which is that there's just so much, I guess, like generally people don't know. There's no awareness, I guess is the point I'm looking at. There's not really a lot of awareness about it. I mean, I don't know really much about it. I just Googled it after I knew I was going to be talking to you.
Yep. And like that's the thing, like I felt bad because I didn't know what it was. And then I was like, well, what can I do as in my part to sort of play with this? So I started speaking to Brad and I was like, oh, do you want to get cystic fibrosis on board? We'll try and raise some money for yous. And that all started ticking over like that, which was awesome. And I just realized like.
So that you then put your marathon, your half Ironman purpose to cystic fibrosis to what, raise funds for?
To raise funds, yep. So just set a big goal of like trying to raise 100,000. I was like, if set a big goal, you don't hit it, doesn't matter. Good. So we ended up raising like $45,000 for cystic fibrosis, which like was awesome because a lot of the people that I spoke to, they'd never had anyone without cystic fibrosis to even go and like support them in a way. And my biggest thing towards the end of it, it wasn't even about the money. It was like, how can we get it out there to the most people to find like, because people living with cystic fibrosis, someone's like, oh, if someone says it, they're like, oh yeah, you've got cystic fibrosis. Like, is it a bad disease? Are you going to give it to me? Can I catch it off you? What's going to happen?
So through this, have you met lots of people with cystic fibrosis now?
Yeah. So I've met one of my really good mates, Rory, who I was at the footy with yesterday. He was the first person with cystic fibrosis to complete an Ultraman, which is a 10K swim and a 180K bike ride the first day. And then the second day is a 300K bike ride. Then the last day is an 84K run.
Wow.
So he done that with cystic fibrosis. So legend of a dude.
Ultraman.
I've
never heard of that.
Yeah. That's
another level, yeah.
Yeah. A completely different level. And he's just such a nice guy. And it's funny because Rory and Brad have both got cystic fibrosis, but they've never been able to be in the same room because like some people with cystic fibrosis aren't allowed in the same room because their genes might mix and their bugs might harm each other.
Really?
Yeah.
So what, they're not allowed in the same?
So they're not allowed.
How do they know that?
So it got found out in America. I think it was like 2005, but they used to put all the CF kids in a room together. And then one hospital over there, all these kids passed away.
Wow.
And because they realised that they were transferring bugs. So when Rory's 31 at the moment, but when he first started getting treatment, he was in the same thing, like all the CF kids in the same room, like you've all got the same disease. But then they realised that they're not actually allowed to mix.
Doctors say CF patients should stay at least 6 feet apart.
You put your arms out and someone stands next to you and put their arms out. That's about how far our kids should stand away from each other.
Dr. Jamie Becker knows it can be unrealistic.
When you have 2 kids in a household with CF, the rules kind of go out the window.
She wants her patients to live their best lives.
Because we're siblings, you really can't be 6 feet apart. It's kind of like impossible.
Rory's like, oh, I'll just be the doer. Brad's the talker. Like Brad is a exceptional talker. Like conveys his words perfectly. He does a lot of like public speaking and that. But Rory's like, when Rory sets his mind to do something, it's like.
So those two guys helped you with this.
Yeah. So they were like my two main guys. Like Rory got on the bike with me a lot and come out and showed his support. And then Brad through his he's got his podcast and social media presence, like helped out with that way as well. So they were like 2 guys at the start of it that I knew with cystic fibrosis before I'd even started doing it. But then just along the way, like I met so many families that they just come down. There was like, I think it was the second day of the challenge, like I was just doing it out of the back of Stafford car park, and we've all got like the cystic fibrosis. We've got a banner up and that, just trying to get people to donate money as they're walking out of the shops. And there was this lady called Gwen, and I think she's probably about mid-70s. And she comes up and she's like, oh, what do you just got the cystic fibrosis stuff up for? It ended up working out that her grandson had cystic fibrosis. Right. And then every day, Gwen on her morning walk would come past and like say hello to us, and just like different parts like that. We had families that have got like around here that have got young kids with cystic fibrosis that came out and just really showed how much it meant for them to like have someone else helping them out. Was crazy. Yeah,
it sounds awesome. And then so where were you actually doing your runs? Like where were the half marathons? They weren't all in the same spot. They were in the same spots.
So like I said, I'm a man who loves routine, and honestly it was the best thing for me because like I was sort of saying before, with having everyone around me and that. So every morning I'd get up at like, I think it was 4:45, my alarm would go off. I'd literally get out of bed, I'd try and have some water and that. And by the stage of day 3, I could hardly walk. So it was like, you're getting up, you're stumbling out of bed. And I'd make it 5 steps and just go and sit on the bedside table next to on the stool next to my bed. And I'd just sit there for like 10 minutes just trying to get my bearings about, all right, I'm going again today.
Wow, man.
So I'd get to the pool at Centenary Pool.
Yep.
Go there, do my swim.
So where's that again? Is that over here in?
Yeah, just at something hill.
Not St. Paul's Terrace up there near Victoria Park.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, So we'd swim there. We'd go there, and so I'd get there at 5.
And they knew what you were doing?
Yeah. So they were awesome as well. Like they let anyone who wanted to come in and swim with me come in for free. And
awesome, man.
At the end of my lane, we had like our CF banner up, and heaps of people that were going in there every morning. Like they end up catching on that every morning I'm in there to do my 1.9K. They'd come and support, and it was like really good.
We'll put your social media on the links here so you can people can see, because I imagine you've got lots of footage and photos.
Yeah, mate. My missus was all over that. She was just like, I don't reckon I touched my phone probably a handful of times over the challenge because I was just like dead. I was like, here, take my phone. You can do whatever.
Great.
But it was like, 5:30, you're doing your 1.9K swim, you're coming out, having a shower. Then we drive to Stafford shops, and then we just have our base set up there for the day. So I'd start the bike ride there and go on the Kedrenbrook all the way out to, where do we even get out to? Pretty much, Redcliffe sort of thing.
How many K is that out there? How many K is? So
we do 90K on the bike.
90K, yeah.
And then we come back.
And then do the half marathon.
And then, have a bit of lunch, whatever, and then go out on do the half marathon on the same track every single day.
Wow.
And it's funny, like, I still ride that track a lot now. And for the first couple of months, I had no feelings about it whatsoever. But just like recently, I had like this whole new perspective shift. And like I said, I'm still riding this track probably twice a week.
Yeah.
And it was just like I started riding in it, all the emotions of it. And it's been nearly 6 months since the challenge now. just like actually started to hit me, and I'm so grateful for it now. But like I said at the start, I think it was more me, like when I first finished it and when it all finished, I was like, oh, it is what it is. Like, I don't care about it. But now looking back at it, I'm so grateful for it because of all the people's that life's changed during that. Like, not just my own. So many people have then come out of that and they've started doing their own triathlons, and I've had people that never swam before do swimming challenges now. And like one of my best mates, his New Year's resolution for 4 years in a row was just to get in the water and swim, petrified of swimming. And then the last 2 days he ended up doing 2 half Ironmans in a row.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man.
So like just
The inspiration, it's amazing.
To see like the people that were around me inspired me so much. Like obviously I probably inspired them to a degree, but now looking back at it, I'm like, I'm so inspired by them. Like to see
butterfly effect of, good things being passed on. And I think deep down, everyone wants to do better. If someone shows them a way, not everyone, but people grab onto the things that they think they can do and 100%. They can relate to, and I think that's awesome, man. I think that's really awesome. Did you have any big emotional moments during that? Like, what was it like when what were some of the emotional moments during that?
It's really funny because I'm not an emotional guy. Like you speak to my missus, speak to my parents. I'm just straight. Like I don't cry.
We all say that, but there's something that gets us.
There is, 100%. Like, but I'm like just very like, and the whole challenge for me, I started off and I was like, I'd sort of heard of people doing these sort of things before. And my mindset going into it was like, don't ride the highs too high and don't let the lows get too low. And I sort of really realized that at about, I think it was like day 4, like, because we started on a Friday. So it was like Friday, a fair few people showed up. Saturday, a fair few people showed up. Sunday, a fair few people showed up. And then it was the Monday. Then no one showed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was riding this high of like having people around to talk to and seeing people jump on the bike and swim, whatever. And I was riding this high of the first 3 days, and then it was just like crash. And then that was like a real moment of like, all right, don't let the emotions get too much of you. Which a part of me sort of regrets now. I think it was because it was so unknown for me. It was like, I don't know whether I'm even going to be able to do this. So I didn't want to sort of get cocky and like get to day 3 and like be all excited and then get to day 4 and be feeling like shit or whatever. So for me, it was just like, just play a poker face the whole day. Like try and be as best as you could. There was certainly like day 10 and day 11 were probably the worst days, where it was like, it was super windy, pissing down rain, no one out there. It was literally just me on the bike path by myself, just pedaling as hard as I could into the wind, moving nowhere. And like my chain fell off and just different little bits and pieces that were all like, it was bound to happen. But
sure,
those were like the more emotional sort of things. But I think for me, the biggest emotion was like the last day. It was like it all happening, and it wasn't even like running through the banner at the end. It was more, once we'd done the challenge, we there was like a little pub around the corner. So we got everyone in there and we done like a little auction off thing of some of the swimming caps and different stuff like that. And it was just, we got up there and we started thanking people who had helped out. And it was just like Jen from the swimming, from the pool who'd helped out. She'd open up every single morning, like even on her days off, like, because Sunday we weren't meant to open at 5 o'clock. So like she would go and open up for us, and people who would come and help with photography, and just Gwen who showed up every morning. And just like, we started thanking all these people, and it was just like emotions just started opening. Everyone started like crying, like,
wow.
And like I said, I very rarely cry. And it was just that emotion of like my parents coming up and then being, and it was just my sisters, my best mates. And it was just like, yeah, that emotion of like how much of a community event it was, that was the biggest thing for me.
Wow, man.
It wasn't even me doing it. Like the weirdest part, like talking about emotions, was like when I finished the run on the last day, we sort of had, we had the fireys there. They had like their big fire truck spraying water down. We had a Red Bull van. So it was like, there would have been 75 people there on a Friday Arvo, everyone having a good time. They were like, oh, we're all going to go to the pub. I was like, yeah, sweet. There was like, my gym was literally just like 10 meters. I was like, I'm just going to go have a quick shower and I'll meet you in the pub. And I went and had my shower, and I just felt like, in terms of like the event and the physical challenge, I felt empty. Like I didn't feel like it challenged me enough. And sure, at the start it was petrifying, but by day 20, I was like, oh, I've got this in the bag, and it didn't challenge me anymore. But I felt empty, as in like that wasn't what I wanted out of it. So yeah, like I look at the emotions that I get from that are really just more around a community rather than myself.
Right.
Yeah.
So so then you had that conflict after it was done, that sort of conflict within about whether it was big enough or whether it was enough.
Yeah. And I'm still going with that now. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just always thinking about the next big thing. Like one of my biggest goals is like I want to have, talking about Andy Frisell, like he's got a nutrition company called First Form, and they've got like this big factory set up, and it's like a huge gym, but then on the side of it's like all their office blocks. And I think about that like nearly every single day, but it's like it's so big and daunting that I just don't even know how to start getting there. And for me, I'm like always like, all right, how do I get towards that goal? How do I get towards that goal?
What goal is that? Having a gym?
Having like not just the gym, but it's like having that community of people. Like the gym's immaculate.
Right.
And it's like, I could get the gym, but it's like.
What's it called? First Gym?
First Form.
First Form.
First Form. So it's like a nutrition company. So they do like protein and that. But like just their gym that they've got for the company is like immaculate. But it's like everyone in there holds each other to a standard. And that's one thing that I pride myself on. Like I hold people to a standard. But this community, it's like, oh God, it's a worldwide brand now, but every day they've probably got about 150 employees in there that all hold each other to a standard. And that for me, it's like, that's probably one of my biggest goals. And I'm just like, every day I just think about it, but I'm like, how do I get there to that
When
stage?
you say, but I'm confused. What is the goal? To work there, to go there, to build something
To probably have something like to probably run something like that, to be the leader of something like that is probably the
Do you feel that
goal
maybe
for me.
you started to make you've got this idea that you can make a big impact and a positive impact or something, and you want to
without
just
a doubt,
like try and do what you did with that record, but more regularly and on a bigger scale? Is that sort of the goal? Is that what you?
I think so, and like even if it's not with I think it probably has something to do with the record. But I used to think about this. I don't know. As soon as I saw this, it was like, that's what I want from my life. Like,
what are you doing at the moment? What sort of what do you do for work right now?
So at the moment, I work at a recovery lab.
Yeah.
So I'm a manager there, and then I also work with another company called Character Builders, which we go into primary schools and high schools and work with like their year 6 and year 12 leadership groups to help them be better leaders. And then I also do like a little bit of coaching, like triathlon wise, running wise as well on the side.
So there's nothing right now that you're putting out there, like there's no sort of big ultra coming up or a big, what are you working towards
So I'm working,
now?
like physically I'm working towards the Ironman, which is in 8 weeks. And look, like I think it'd be tough, but it's like, it doesn't scare me. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things like I love being scared by a challenge as well. Like the thought of like not knowing if you can complete something and like I haven't been defeated yet. Like in so to say, like sure you might not get the time that you want, but it's like I still done the race. Or it's like I finished the 100K or I finished my 36 half Ironmans, and like there was one race that I'd done on New Year's Eve. It was called done a backyard ultra, and I was like didn't train for shit leading into it. Like that was my first event that I'd done after my half Ironmans. Not trying to take, like I was sick obviously going into it, and I was pretty cool. Like the next 3 days after I was like, yeah, definitely shouldn't have done it. But to that point where you started at 7 o'clock in the night. So I think I pulled out we started at 5 o'clock. So I pulled out about 10 o'clock at night, and it was pitch black dark, no one around you. And I just felt like so helpless.
Yeah.
As weird as it sounds, I sort of love that feeling of like being at that breaking point. And like looking back at it now, I bitched out but I look at it, I'm like, yeah, you're sick. But I was like, I bitched out. Like I could have went for another lap probably. Like, because it's all time based. Like my first 4 laps I've done all in like 40 minutes. And I was like, sweet, bang, had 20 minutes rest. And then it just got to the 5th lap and I come in at 57 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus, like that whole lap just completely, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
But that feeling of being exhausted and just asking yourself questions about what sort of man are you and what can you do?
Everything you've described, it makes me want to ask you one question. Have you ever thought about having kids?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking like you know,
is that what it
you
is?
want to get scared.
Yeah.
You're worried if you're going to do a good job. You want
Yeah.
something that, you know, like I sort of look at your generation as well. And I think there's obviously you guys are all having kids a lot later.
Yep.
And there's a lot of these running groups and stuff like that you talk about. And sometimes I do listen to younger people talk about these sort of holes in their life.
Yep.
And I think, you know, children will fill that. You know what I mean? Like all those things you just described, because even when you have, as someone who's got 3 kids, even when you have that business, even when you have that, whatever it is you think it is, you know, there's always going to be that what's next.
Yeah.
And I think that when I was just listening to you talk before there was something you said and I thought, you know what, kids would solve that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was all. Yeah. I just thought I'd ask you what your thoughts on that were.
No. And like, that's, like you said, definitely down the track. My girlfriend, she's a pro swimmer. So it's like, at the moment, it's like, no kids or anything at the moment. But that's something that like, I'm personally like so excited for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't want to preach about it too much, but I've had a few conversations like this. Like I was talking to a young girl the other day. She was probably 29 and, you know, the things that she was describing, you know, I couldn't help but just say, yeah, but like, it sounds like you really just want to have kids.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't want to say that because obviously it's quite a sensitive subject. She was able to, and she did have a partner and all that sort of stuff. But I was just thinking about like, when you get that sort of point in your life where there's like that void that nothing seems to fill, you know, it's sort of, I don't know whether it's nature calling or what, but it did cross my mind when you were talking. I was thinking, it might be.
It does make sense.
You know, because
my missus would be listening to this going, oh shit.
Yeah.
No, but no, you do have like a good point. And like I said, like that's something that's like down the track and it excites the shit out of me.
Course,
like,
no, it's great.
I'm so excited to have kids. Like,
because even when you talk about leadership, and obviously I'm sort of getting off topic here, but I don't mind talking about it. But like for me, like I've done a lot of cool stuff and had a lot of, you know, wins in life, but I've also had a lot of disappointment. And I've also done things with people that, you know, I have this sort of bond with, and then one day you look back and you think, I haven't seen that person for 10 years, you know, we did all this amazing stuff together, but now I don't even know where that person is.
Yeah.
And I think that since I've had the kids, there's just that different element to it. Obviously the relationship you have with your parents and you know, when you have that sort of connection and you train, like when you're coaching, you know, you were saying about doing coaching and you're saying about being a leader and then you were saying, I like to be scared. And I'm thinking, that's pretty much parenting.
You are on the right point. 100%. And like I said, like me and my dad, we're best mates. Like,
that's beautiful, man.
So to be able to have that with my son is like definitely one of my biggest goals in life. Like,
I think there's a guy I was thinking of, a quote. I'm not really sure who said it, so I can't quote it properly, but it was something to the effect of, you know, if you don't go and find your Goliath will find you, sort of thing. And I think that what I like about your story is that, you know, you've got all this ability, and you know that you have a monster that you can defeat, and you're going out and actually going, right, I want to find it. Because I feel like the people are a lot more able than they think, and they don't do anything with their abilities, you know, or they sit dormant, or they spend too much time doing, you know, insert procrastination here, right? Video games, porn, fucking, you know, 100%. Drinking too much, whatever. So they're very powerful humans, and they do these sort of innocuous, silly sort of activities, and before you know it, some big battle comes and finds them. They find themselves battling mental illness, or they find themselves battling a job, an issue at their work, or they find themselves somehow that Goliath problem finds them, you know, whether it be a fight with their parents or. So I think that the fact that you're able to choose your next target helps with like clarity of mind over all these other areas of your life because you're like, that needs to be in control because I've got to go out and fight this battle. Where if you don't have that battle, you can sometimes make the battle at home.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree. And it's like all about, I guess, like I think there's a quote and it's like tough choices, easy life, easy choices, tough life.
Exactly.
And like, I guess it comes down to that. It's always like pick the hardest option, I guess.
Yeah, they say choose your heart or something. Or is that the same sort of thing? Something like that. Yeah, I've heard something like that before. Yeah. I was listening to your other podcast as well, and you were talking. There was a point in their podcast talking about Aussie drinking culture.
Yeah,
where you said that you heard the expression "Don't trust a man that
doesn't drink."
Don't trust a man that doesn't drink.
Yeah.
It was funny because that sort of sent me on a bit of a search to find out where that actually originated. Yeah. Have you ever Googled it or anything?
Never Googled it.
So
I'd love to know.
There's actually a song by a comedian called Les Patterson. He was an Australian comedian. He did he dressed as a woman called Dame Edna.
Oh,
You remember Dame Edna?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was basically just a comical song about how bad his father's advice was.
Yeah.
And I thought it was real funny that it actually, all anyone takes out of it is the don't trust a man that doesn't drink. But if you actually listen to the song, it's actually just a joke about how bad the decisions his father made, and this was the advice he also gave him.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just funny that you put that phrase in there that you had heard that phrase. Don't trust a man who doesn't drink.
Yeah.
And we use it
as
but it's like actually just terrible advice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, it is funny, and like that's the thing. Like I look at it now, and like I said, I can go out with people who are drinking, and it is what it is. Like, and I think the reason why people, especially in footy clubs and whatnot, don't like to be around a guy that's not drinking is because they're like, can we trust him? If we're doing stupid shit and he's sober and he's not the one doing stupid shit, what's he like?
Where's his buy-in?
We don't have, exactly. Where's his buy-in? Like, we don't have any like dirt on him. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have a little bit of dirt on someone, so it's like, if you fuck up, at least don't you talk up because I can say this on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like the sober guy, you got no dirt on, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like one of those like satanic clubs or something in the States where everyone does something. So they've got dirt on everyone, I wanted to just quickly ask you what your thoughts were on social media. And like, I guess I asked the same thing of Nick, like how has social media impacted you in what you've done? Has it inspired you? Has it affected you? And the question I asked him is, would you do it if you couldn't share it?
Yeah. So I don't and it's a very difficult time to be on social media, I think. Like, look, with all my sort of stuff, it's like you'd love to get sponsors on board and everything, and I just hate sharing shit. Like, I don't hate sharing shit, but I'm just shocking at it. Like, I'll take a video and be like, I'll post that on Instagram and try and keep people in the loop. And then I look back and I'm like, I took 5 videos on Saturday that I didn't post and it's Monday now, so I'm not going to post it. And I'm real bad at posting stuff.
Are you shy about it, or do you feel it's ego? Like, do you feel it's
probably
exhibitionism?
Ego, like, I don't know. It's just like, I also really don't care that much what people think. So I do want to share because it's like, I feel like a weird part of me belongs to be seen by a lot of people. It's like, I feel like a lot of people could see what I'm doing and it's like, they would take something out of that. But for me, I'm just like, I'm not a big social media guy. So I know Nick's one was like 50-50, but for me, it's like, I'd do it if people didn't watch. Like, I couldn't give to, like, there's the Stravas and there's all that out at the moment. Like, I'm the worst at Strava. Like, mine all uploads, but I couldn't give a shit if people like it, if people see it, if people don't see it. For me, it's more about like what I get out of it for myself, I guess. And look, like, I love inspiring people. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's an awesome thing to do. But social media and that for me these days, it's like, there's just a lot of bullshit out there as well. And I think for me, the toughest thing for me is, and like my girlfriend, she's like, you should share more and do a post or a video like this. And I'm like, but then a part of me is also like, you don't want to be put in that same box as those fucking, like, because I'll see a lot of shit and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe people are putting a video about that or saying this stupid thing or saying this something about running or whatever it is. But I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I'm like, I do not want to be that guy who's putting up there and people are going, oh yeah, we should do what Layne says or doing this video. And I'm like, oh my God, that looks so fucking stupid. So
it's tough. Like when you were mentioning about the running clubs before, I mean, I don't want to name names or, you know all about them, but there's a lot of running clubs and they're just, I find them quite intimidating and not intimidating in the sense that if I was a young girl, for example, I don't know if I'd be encouraged to go running with those people.
Yeah.
It's very, you have to be hot. You have to have the active wear. You have to be gorgeous.
Yeah.
And most of them are genetically gifted. They've not actually earned that body. So I think that if you're an overweight person or someone who struggles, sometimes that stuff can be quite intimidating.
And the hardest thing that I've sort of found, and like you said, these people are genetically gifted. Like they might say they've done all this work or they've gone to the gym every day, but 9 times out of 10, like, look, I'm blessed, like I've got a fast metabolism. I could look this way if I didn't do any training whatsoever. I'd probably lose weight if I didn't do any training. So for me, if you look at some of these girls who are just genetically gifted and beautiful, whatever it is, but then they're putting up their training programs or whatever, and they actually don't have any skin in the game, but then you've got all these people who believe them and then go and follow them. And it's a load of horse shit, really, but it's just like they're trying to get it out there to get more likes and get more followers. Then these people get injured or whatever it is, and I just don't like the look of that. I just sort of...
It's also, take this for what it's worth. I mean, ultra running and run clubs is just the whitest group of people, you know, like it's just a white person thing and it's not something you see... you don't see it in third worlds. You don't see it in, emerging economies. You only really see it in Western, middle class, affluent societies. And I know that these are the same people that will preach inclusivity and all that sort of stuff. But it's a very exclusive group, you know what I mean? So have you ever had any, like, I guess, am I the first person that's mentioned that to you? Or is like...
No.
Or have you noticed it as well when you do like the Kosciuszko runs? I mean, obviously when you get to ultras, you are dealing with a group of elite athletes. But it's still a very white-dominated sport.
It is, and I've never had anyone point that out before. Like, you're not wrong. Like, you look at something like triathlon, it's like, I think I actually saw an Instagram reel the other day of this this black guy. He was putting up about a triathlon reel, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I know that I got to smile for the cameras because there's a 50% chance they're going to put me up on the front page because I'm the only black guy in the race or whatever it is." And it was like, that's probably the first time I really saw. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's not like it is a very white dominated sort of sport."
Yeah,
in that sort of sense.
And I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's just something that I noticed. Particularly when I look at the run clubs now becoming like a social media bonanza. I was looking at the people that are in it. I'm like, well, there's really no sort of it's not just diversity from a race point of view, but it's diversity from a culture point of view. Like it's all inner city, middle class. And I thought I could see how people would feel a bit intimidated about that. But having said that, if you had to get someone, like if you were not a runner, where do you reckon the best place to start would be?
I like there's so many different ones for different people.
Do you like park run? Have you seen?
I've never done a park run in my life.
Yeah, right.
I've seen it, and I just that doesn't fit for me.
Yeah.
I've ran past park run plenty of times, but it just doesn't. I don't know. For me, there's lots of different ones. There's like around here. There's Club KT, super inclusive group. Then there's like a triathlon group that I do a bit of training with, like Core for Endurance, who are like really inclusive as well. And I think it's all about like, there's even groups like Mega Run, like in, or like even your So-Sos, which is probably one of those groups that you're talking about that are very influencer vibe. And sometimes that's a good place for someone to start. I know that's where I started at one of those groups, and I look at it now. I'm like, I'd never go and run there now. But for me, when I first started, I was like,
yeah, but this is the thing. If it works, it works. And I'm not trying to be a hater, by the way. Like, 'cause I'm the last guy to bring up inclusivity and all that. I think it's overplayed, man. So I was just something that I noticed. And I actually, like, I'm the same with park run. I do park run. I'm like 50 something park runs deep, you know? But like, I can see how people who are running a lot would run past park run and go, oh, geez, like, you know, but I can also.
It is so inclusive. And like, look, I look at some of the park runners there and there's guys doing 16-minute 5Ks and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And like,
there's also guys doing 2 hour 5Ks.
And that's the thing. Like, I also go past a guy who's walking the sign back in and I'm like, mate, I just ran past the start and no one's even there. Like, and you've just started turning around to the 2.5K mark. Like, so it's a very like large array. And I think for like, younger people, it sometimes is better to just go to those energetic places and look, you'll either fit in or like you at least put yourself in an uncomfortable position anyway. And I do find that most people have been in that situation. Like they've been the person there who's nervous to talk to. So
I bet you
someone's going to walk up to you.
I think what I was just going to say, sorry, I think I cut you off there.
No, you're right.
One thing that just hit me as well, I think what I was trying to say about the social media thing is, it gives off a vibe, but I bet you if you went down to those run clubs, they'd be just the most awesome,
completely different,
funnest people, and I think that's where social media sometimes works against it.
Well, and that's why I sort of don't like shit. Like I don't know, because I feel like on social media, like I can do whatever, but I just don't feel like you're going to get the true me, and that's probably up to me to just be a better sharer at social media and show my true personality.
But if you do that, no one will watch it, right?
Exactly, you got to do something stupid or whatever. You got to get people clicking on it. So that's the thing, like, I'm one of those guys that I'll go and do stupid shit and I'll have a laugh and I'm a genuine dude and whatever, like not trying to note myself up, but I'm just a genuine guy. But say my social media for when I was doing the challenge, it's like, oh, Layne doing this half Ironmans and whatever. But realistically, I'm just another dude. Like, I don't give a shit about the half Ironmans or whatever like that. It's like
you're not just another dude, man. That mullet, I tell you.
Yeah, the mullet, and the moat. That's my superpowers. But
So where did that come from? Like, when did that come from?
Mate, I've had a mullet now for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
and like it just started off as like people started doing like a little mohawk mullet sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then that was the cool thing, and then it just like started getting longer, and then I was like, oh, it'd be cool to do something different. Do I try and bleach my mullet? And then I started,
it looks great. I reckon
I started doing that, but then it's just a shit show. Like you try and swim, then you got shit knotty hair. I
think it looks great. I really do. I think it really makes you stand out. And if you're doing something like what you're doing, you know, it's definitely like a recognizable.
It's a different point. Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I think it's been a great chat, man.
Mate, thank you. No, it's been awesome.
Did you have anything you wanted to go over? Is that it? You cool with that?
That's it for me. Like I'm happy with that. Like,
well, all the best, man. I think maybe like do a few more runs and stuff, and maybe we'll catch up again in a year or so and see where you're at and what you've learnt and if you've had any kids. And
hopefully no. I don't know. The missus might be like having a realization here. Listen to this, going,
you never know.
You never know. Yeah. But look, I'm hoping like. I'm thinking like towards the end of this year that something's just going to click. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things like we were just talking about, do hard things and have an easy life and whatever. But I'm just feeling like something's going to click sooner or later. And I don't know, like you can say that as much as you want, but until something happens, it doesn't know. But yeah.
Well, you know, the universe listens, you know, you speak it. You know, and like you said before, when you mentioned about, you know, putting a big target there for your 100 grand, I mean, like I've had many experiences where I write down all my goals and I've written down goals and I've just thought to myself after it's happened, I've thought to myself, why didn't I just write down a bigger goal? Like,
100%,
Like, I don't know why I put that there because that happened and it was so easy and I should have just doubled that.
Yeah.
So, you know, intention is cause, man. Like if you're out there looking for it, I'm sure it'll come and you know, we'll track your progress, mate. If you come back in and talk to us again.
I'll be back in for sure, mate, in this beautiful studio.
Thanks, man.
Mate, thank you.
Chat to you.
Awesome.
Cheers, man. That was good.
That was really good, man. That was awesome.